Hi, welcome. We'll give people about 1 or 2 more minutes to log on, then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I have a lot of material I would like to get through today. So my name is Kristen Zukoski. I've worked at OIT for a while, and I am the director of High Step, which is one of our summer programs. Before that, I was actually a graduate student on campus and did my PhD in neuroscience. But one of the things that I really like to talk about is applying to college and how to get into college. And so I hope that I can give you some information today that will be useful to you as you start this process. One of the reasons that we do this so early in the summer is that I hope you will take advantage of your time off from school this summer to really get started on this process and really have a good head start. So I hope you'll begin that after today. So as an introduction, this is our first high school and recent high school graduate seminar. So welcome to our summer virtual enrichment program. We really are sad that we cannot all be together on campus, but the benefits of this platform is that we can see many of you on and lots of you who are not able to come to Bethesda, you can now still participate in this series throughout the summer. So welcome. If you attend 5 of the 6 sessions or watch the recordings, you will be eligible for a certificate. We're going to keep track of that on our end. So be aware that you will be eligible at the end of the summer if you participate in at least 5. Please, in addition, look carefully at the curriculum to see if there are other events on other days that would be helpful to you. On Wednesdays, we have a wellness series. On Fridays, we have lots of seminars about science that are going to be put on our other institutes and centers. And on Mondays, we also have a session at 1 o'clock that's going to be in their own words. So that's where trainees who have come through our summer programs or come through our other programs are going to give you a taste of their background and how they got to where they are now. So I hope you'll take advantage of all of those things throughout the summer. My outline for today, here are the things I'll be talking about. Choosing colleges, tips for personal statements, recommendation letters, a little bit about financial aid and scholarships and planning for your senior year. If you have questions, go ahead and type them in the question box. I'll pause a couple of times throughout to answer questions, but go ahead and you can type them in and I'll look at them. So to get started, some common college myths. So I hear all of the time about good colleges and bad colleges, and really that's a myth. There are no good colleges or bad colleges, and there are colleges that are better for you or that places where you will thrive. Another myth, future employers and graduate schools give an edge to graduates of prestigious universities. Again, this is another myth. It's more important that you do well in college and that you take advantage of all of the resources that you are offered. That's more important than going to a prestigious university. Schools that cost more are of higher quality. Again, another myth. We know that some private schools, some prestigious schools are expensive. They're sticker price, but know that there are lots of options for you, federal aid, scholarships, other things I'll be talking about today that in some cases make it so that schools are more available to you than you might think. And private schools are more expensive than public schools. Again, not all the time, because private schools have these really giant endowments in many cases, and they like to give that aid to students. And so many times, private schools are actually going to be a better option for some students than public schools, depending on the aid that you're offered. Some tips as you're going through this process. Don't limit yourself, keep an open mind. I know we get a lot of messages from our teachers, our counselors, our parents, but you need to be honest with yourself about where you want to go and where you will do well. So that means take the time now to start doing your homework, researching online, talk to people who know you really well. What do you think my communication style is? What is my learning style? What is important to me? Have those conversations now, and talk to people at the colleges in which you're interested. You can do informational interviews. There are lots of virtual options right now. Virtual tours, virtual info sessions, so take advantage of all of those too. A word on privacy. I like to tell my students this every year. Throughout this process, lots of people are going to be asking you about your college application process. Where are you applying? Where did you get in? Your friends, your teachers, your uncle, your aunt. And so you have a couple of options, but you don't have to disclose all of that information if that's stressful for you or you don't want to. So if you're asked that question, you can say, I'm not really sure. I'm just going to take a year off and I'm going to skydive in Australia. Or you can say something like, I'm not really sure yet. Would you tell me about your process? How did you decide where to go to school? And then you really turn it back on them, and really you can gain some valuable insights from those people in your life who really mean well. But have this conversation with your parents too, because it can be a really stressful time. The other people in your family have this conversation. Okay, your questions. Keep them general, keep them to questions that are applicable to many students. So I'm not going to answer any questions that are specific to you, your scores, your GPA, your potential schools. And so I'd rather hear questions like, oh, I heard demonstrated interest is important. How can I show that? Or what are the best places to find scholarships? So keep that in mind as you're writing questions. Okay, part one is about choosing your colleges and really starting to craft your list. And I would encourage you to do that this summer when you have time to do your research. So it's important that you know yourself and that you know colleges. So the first step is to really understand yourself and where you will do well. So choosing a college that is the right fit for you. So by that, I mean academics, location, cost, and lifestyle. And there's this really great book by Frank Bruni that's Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. There's a lot of research about people who go to schools that are smaller, are liberal arts, and are incredibly successful because they take advantage of the resources. They make connections with professors. They do other things that other students don't. So really it's about where you will do well and where you will have a community and where you will thrive. Okay, so academics. There are lots of options for schools. There are liberal arts schools. There are places that have honors college. There are research institutions. So think about the academic environment and the academic offerings. I want you to think about schools for you where the level of academic pressure is enough, but without being frustrated or stressed out. I want you to enjoy your college years. So I don't want you to be in a place that isn't going to be a good academic fit for you. Some schools have a tremendous workload, and so you would need to prioritize really well. Some schools have a lot of competition between students and in really big classes, so be thinking about that environment and whether you think you will do well there. Some schools are very intellectual. They have a very scholarly emphasis. Or do you really want a place where you can balance the social side of campus life and do some other things that are important to you? Do you thrive under pressure or not? Do you thrive with competition? Do you thrive in big lecture classes or not? And do they have your intended majors? Keeping in mind that some smaller schools don't have as many options for majors, but that's okay. So I talk to students all the time who are interested in going to medical school or going to graduate school, and they say, oh, well, I really want to major in neuroscience, but this school doesn't have that. You don't need to necessarily have a major that is more specific. Most schools are going to have something like biology or chemistry. And so be looking at their offerings. They might have a neuroscience class or two, but be thinking about how specific you want to be at this stage in your career. When I'm talking about location, I really mean two things. I really mean location as in place in the United States. So do you want to be close to home? Do you want to be within driving distance of home? Do you want to be on the other side of the country? Do you want to try something new? Also keep in mind weather in all of these different regions is really important. Do you want to go somewhere where it's going to be warmer or sunny, or do you really want snow? Do you want to be on the West Coast? So be thinking about location. I also mean, do you want a campus environment that's urban, more suburban, or a rural environment? So urban is really in a city. This would be like going to school in DC, American, Howard, Georgetown. Do you thrive on that city environment that's very different from a suburban campus outside of a major city, but still with access to the events and other things that are happening in a city? So this would be like University of Maryland, College Park. Or do you really want to go to a rural environment? Do you want to be in the country? Do you want to have lots of space and trees? So this is the type of college experience that I had. And I really needed to take a 4-hour bus ride to get into a city, but I felt like everything on my college campus had what I needed. And so I really didn't miss the city. Other people would really miss the city life if they were so far away from it. So balance all of these things as you are making your list. Also take into consideration the cost. So public versus private school, these are going to be different. And cost is not just tuition. So it's dorms, it's food, it's plane tickets home if you're far away, in-state versus out-of-state tuition. And so if you add all of these things up, on the college websites, they are required to have their sticker price, which includes all of those fees. It includes tuition, dorms, food, any additional student fees, and then they also have a net price calculator. And so I would encourage you, for all of the schools that you're considering, go ahead and fill in, click on their link to the net price calculator. It's not perfect, and it doesn't guarantee that that is the financial aid package you will have, but it would give you a sense of the type of package you could expect from that school. So it asks you some basic information about your family, how many kids are at home, some basic income questions, and then it gives you an estimate of what your package would look like. And so do that for all of the schools, because those tend to stay fairly consistent from year to year. The other really great resource for you is studentaid.gov, and that will answer a lot of your questions about financial aid, and I'll talk in a little bit about some more specifics in regards to financial aid. The other thing you need to consider is lifestyle. So that is size, the size of the school. Do you want a smaller school? Smaller schools typically have more student-professor interactions, more discussions. You might have a better chance of getting recommendation letters earlier on because you would know those professors better. Those schools sometimes have a personal development piece that is really important. They make teaching a high priority. So some places where research is a high priority, those professors maybe aren't as great at teaching, or more courses are taught by graduate students or other people. So consider that. Extracurricular activities, if it's a smaller university, a smaller school, then for some of these things you might not have to be a superstar, right? You don't need to go to a D1 school to play football, but maybe there are some club options for those things at a smaller school. Smaller classes, a closer knit environment, you probably are going to know or at least recognize many of the people on campus. Or do you want to go to a bigger school? Listening learning styles, especially for some of those earlier classes, there would be more activities, larger classes blend in with the crowd, larger sports teams. Some other factors to consider: housing choices, the student body, what does it look like, who typically goes there and who does well there, what extracurriculars do they offer, athletics and clubs, and what is the diversity profile on that campus, and what do they do to support diverse students on their campus, all things that you should consider. So what I would like you to do when you get some time later today or later this week is make a chart that looks like this. So the things that you really must have, the things that you want, the things that you don't want, and the things that you don't really care that much about. And this will be personal to you, not what your parents want, not what your friends want, not where your best friend wants you to go. Try to do this chart without a school in mind. So I know students who say, oh, I want to go to X school, so then they fill in their chart to match that. Really use this as a time to think about where you would do really well and where you want to go without us having a school in mind. And then I want you to write down your top 3 must-haves. So as you're thinking about schools, some things that you definitely want to have when you're going away to school. What are some things that are really important to you as you're making these decisions? Okay, the next part is really knowing what colleges fit that profile. So you can use Big Future to build a list. So it looks like this. It's on the College Board site. If you just Google Big Future College Board, I have the link at the end. You can go through and select based on your chart. So here's what I mean. So when you're clicking on type of school, you can check these boxes. Do you want to go to a 2-year community college, a 4-year, public, private, for-profit, small, medium, large, co-ed, all women, all men? And you can go through all of these filters that are on the left-hand side and use this toggle at the top and click on don't care, want, or must have for all of these things. And then it will give you a list of schools that match those requirements. So what I recommend is that you start with, say, 2 or 3 states, and then play with this so that you get some schools that start popping up so you can start doing some research. I recommend that you use the school's websites. I also recommend that you use this really amazing source that's called the Fiske guide. So the Fiske guide is quotes from students. It's other information that you really aren't going to find on a school's website. And these are really comprehensive narratives that are written from students' perspective and are really going to give you a different perspective. And what I really like about the Fiske guide is if you find a couple of schools that really sound like, oh yeah, this is a place I would really like to consider, then it gives you some other school choices that are like that school. And so using this guide, you can really start working on your list. I also encourage you to take virtual tours. There are, again, as we are home and as schools are really thinking about admissions and students not being able to visit, there are lots of resources on all of the schools' websites. Read the student newspaper and really try to get a sense of what's important on that campus. What do students really care about? And do I care about those things? Would I find my community on that school? And then the next step is really which schools are going to be a really nice match. So first, you're going to know yourself, you're going to know the colleges, and then are you a good fit for that school? So here are some factors that schools consider. And these are not necessarily in order, but schools in their college data profile, you can go and access how much they care about each of these things. So it's something I would consider that you should look into. But in general, they care about your high school program, your academic rigor, the list of classes that you took in comparison to what's offered at your school. So they understand if your school only has 2 AP classes or doesn't have an IB program, they clearly wouldn't be able to expect you to take those courses because they're not available. And your counselor is going to be filling out a school profile that helps them distinguish these things. The other thing you you should know is for some schools, for most schools, especially ones where those are your in-state schools, the different admissions reps take a region and then they read all of the applications from that region. And so over time, they really get to know your high school well, and they can really compare you with other students that come from your background and your location. They're going to look at your grades and your class rank. They do care about trends in grades over time. And so if you had a difficult transition your freshman year, they understand that. That's very typical for many students. So continue to do well as you can. They are going to care about grades in difficult classes. The other thing you should know is this year, because so many things have changed due to COVID-19 and the pandemic, your counselor is going to have a place to write how your school was affected. So when your school closed, what were the grading options that you had, or what was the grading option that your county went to? So you don't have to worry too much. Everyone is dealing with these exact same problems. And so your counselor is going to have a chance to describe that. And so your admissions committee will know all of those things. They care about your test scores. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but bigger universities typically place more emphasis on test scores, and that's just due to the number of applications they typically receive. I have there some schools are now test optional, but this is ever increasing. Every time I look at those lists, more and more schools are being added due to the SATs and ACTs that were canceled this year. And so it's something that, be aware of that. I would still encourage you to take those tests. But for those test optional schools, if you didn't do as well as you would like, just don't send them. Or if you do well and you want them to take a look, or you're above the mean, above the 75th percent, then go ahead and send them if they're going to help you. They do care about your extracurriculars, your personal qualities, the application, and your personal statements. So again, that's why I want you to start getting to work on that now, so that you have time to really craft your application so it's the best it can possibly be. They care about your recommendations, and they also care about different extenuating circumstances in your background. So it is a relationship. I encourage you to take a look at the average GPAs and the test scores, and in particular, the middle 50%. So I'll talk about that a bit more, but schools publish the ranges of scores and number of students that fall between the 25th and the 75th percent. So you can imagine a bell curve. They're going to have a mean test score, but then they're going to tell you the test scores that most students fell, the range that most students fell into. And so take a look at that also. I encourage you to choose 3 REACH schools. 3 schools that are really going to be a good fit based on your GPA and test scores, and 3 more likely schools. So these are schools that are less selective, or that you would have a really good chance of getting into. The schools that are test optional, it's hard to know exactly. I imagine that this year those schools are going to be getting additional applicants, and so be aware of that as you're applying to schools. I always tell students to apply to at least 1 to 2 in state. That's due to cost, it's due to location. It's a really nice option to make sure to have. And to look at the college data profiles sheets. So these are the sheets that I mentioned that give you a sense of what schools are looking for. So you can go through, it'll tell you, how much do they care about recommendation letters? How much do they care about test scores? So it'll give you a sense so you can match, okay, now I have a list of schools that I'm interested in. I have these stats. Here are some things that I'm interested in and why, and you can really piece that together and make sure that you have a really nice application. The reason that I don't recommend you apply to just a bunch of schools is that it's costly, and I encourage you to do this homework now, and then for those 3 REACH schools, they're going to be really fantastic. You're going to have enough time to really do them well, show demonstrated interest. follow up and make sure those essays are all perfect. And so I don't recommend that you just apply to a bunch of schools that you don't have a good chance of getting into, and that's why. All right, so for example, when I'm talking about the middle 50%, this is for SAT. So Towson University, which is in Maryland, their middle 50 is 500 to 580 for reading and 500 to 590 for math. So what that means is most students fall within that range. That's and so for this student that I have here, this made-up student who has a 650 and a 680, they're well above that 75th percent. So I would say that this is a pretty likely school that this student would get into. And that's why I've marked it with a green square. University of Maryland College Park, their range, their middle 50 is 590 to 690 and 620 to 730. So this made up student, again, that I have falls sort of in that mean. And so I would say that this could be in range, but again, sometimes it's really hard to know because again, this is only one data point. This is only one piece of data that this school has, but it's something you should consider. Yale, their middle 50 is 730 to 800, 740 to 800. And so for this student, this would be a reach school. So again, apply to a couple of schools. Apply to Yale if you want. I fully support that. But pick, say, 3 that are in this category where you could really spend a lot of time perfecting your application. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. Again, is it all about test scores? Definitely not. But if your scores fall in that middle 50% of the college freshman class, then they won't really help or hurt your chances that much. But again, the greater you go to either end, the more it's going to affect you. So the lower your score is, the more it's going to drag down your application. The higher you are, the more likely you are to be able to get into that school. I hear all the time, I have a really good story. Yeah, that's great. Apply to all those schools, apply to that range. Just don't do too many schools and make sure you have some less selective schools, some schools that are really in your likely range where you would be happy to go. Every year I have students who apply to a bunch of schools and I always ask them, okay, these likely schools, would you be happy there? And I make sure that they are really confident in their list. Many schools are going test optional, so look at those lists. And additionally, some schools are going test blind. So that means they are not going to look at anyone's test scores. So not that many schools are doing that right now, but it's something to consider. These are schools that are probably going to have a lot of applications, but it means that they are definitely, you know for sure you're going to get a more holistic view of your application, because they won't even have test scores to consider. So take a look at the list of those schools as well. Okay, so before we move on to personal statements, I am just gonna take a quick look and see if there are any questions to answer really quick. We're gonna talk about scholarships, great, yep. Okay. So someone asked, is it true that smaller liberal arts schools are better if you want to apply to medical school? So again, it depends on how well you do there. Medical schools do like liberal arts degrees. They like you to be well-rounded. They know that liberal arts schools really encourage you to write well and to think critically. And so those are all things that will serve you really well in medical school. How would you know which schools have a certain level of pressure? So that's a great question. Ask admissions, look at the Fiske guide, see if you can talk to students, see if you can talk to alums, and ask them that question. How competitive is it? How hard are the classes? How available are the professors? How much do they help you? How many office hours do they have? All of those types of things. So start working on that now. You have time this summer to start reaching out to those people and be looking for those things. Okay, some of these we're going to get to in just a minute. So is it worth it to visit a school in person and not just through virtual? Yes, absolutely. If that's an option for you, you know, and it's safe and you can social distance, I think visiting a school, you can really get a sense of what it's like. You know, you can get a sense of how big it is, how far it is to go from place to place, and who's there and what are they doing. You can imagine that virtual interviews are put on by admissions personnel to get you to want to go there. It's going to be the perfect day. It's going to be a beautiful campus. And so if you have that option, if it's within driving distance, then I think you should take advantage of that. So for the detailed profile for schools and incoming class, it's the college data profile, and they should have a link to that on their website. Okay. Will subject tests help in applying for schools? Again, if you do well, then absolutely it can help your chances. Some schools, depending on your intended major, may require some subject tests. Again, this is something that you don't necessarily have to send, but if you are really great at physics and you want to take the physics subject test and it's available to you, then go ahead and take it. Those types of things can help you and make you stand out to admissions. ACT or SAT? I know this is common, but please help. It's another really great question. So both of these tests are really different. And so my best advice to students who ask me this question is if you have the option, take both. So there are different places that will let you take both tests. And see which one feels better to you and take both. That's the best way to know. And then whichever one you do better in, that's the one that I say you could take again a second time. Is the SAT worth more than the ACT or vice versa? So they look at them. One is not better than the other, but they're very different tests. So the SAT focuses more, I would say, on reading critically and analyzing, and the ACT is really time-based. So there are many more questions in a much shorter period of time, and so it's hard to know which one you will do better on. So I say take both if you can. If you have a fee waiver, you can get a fee waiver for both and take them, and then again study for one and take it again. The ACT also has that science section. So for those of you who are interested in biomedical research and who are typically better at science, that is also on the ACT. My biggest piece of advice for the ACT is to make sure, well, really for both tests, make sure you really do answer every single question. So go through, answer the ones that you know right away, and then mark and go back and answer the ones that you weren't sure about the first time around. But don't leave anything blank. For both of these tests, you are not penalized if you guess, and so make sure you're guessing. You have lots of really great questions. We transitioned high schools. So any questions that you have that are really specific to you, or something like transitioning. So this student said, we transitioned high schools in between, our GPA doesn't reflect our actual grades. What do we do? You're gonna have a slot that's called additional information. And so when I have students fill out additional information, it's things like that are important, but that aren't reflected elsewhere on your application for whatever reason. But my biggest piece of advice for that additional information section is give them data. So they aren't interested in that section in a story. They just want to know what happened, why is it not on your application somewhere else. But that's a really nice slot that you can include some of those things. Um, Yeah, so some things about dips in grades, and have they been assessed? If there was a dip due to mental health issues later in my high school career, I think this is another thing that you could indeed address in the additional information section. But again, just give them the data. What happened? How have you recovered? What have you done after that? And that could be a good place for you to include those things. Do many private universities offer merit-based scholarships? Yes, absolutely. This is one of the things that is really, really common in private universities. They have a lot of money that they want to give you all. And I'll talk more about this in a little bit, but some you're going to have to fill out an additional application, and some you aren't. You'll just be automatically entered to get some of those merit scholarships, just based on your application and based on your grades and your scores. Lots of questions about medical schools, so I'll try to address that again later. If your parents are set on you going to one particular college, yeah, it's a great question, and something that I would consider talking to them about now. Parents are tough, and they really care about you and want you to do well. And so I would encourage you to start having that conversation. Go to sites like Colleges That Change Lives, and using Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be, Frank Bruni, to start having those conversations, and thinking about what your values and your interests are, and why you want to go someplace that maybe isn't their first choice. But sometimes we have to compromise with our parents, especially depending on how much they're paying. But ultimately, you want to go somewhere where you'll be happy and where you'll do well. Oh, so many good questions. I'll try to come back to some of these later, because I want to keep moving. Okay. All right, let's keep going. All right, so let's talk for a little bit about personal statements and your essays. So the Common App prompts haven't changed; they are the same this year, and I would encourage you to start writing these this particular essay this summer. Some tips. They really want you to answer the question. So make sure if the prompt has 3 parts, that you have answered all 3 parts. So things like challenge, things like growth, make sure you are really answering. Can you write? Okay. And another good reason to start this now, so that you can have people who are able to read this for you. Are you telling the committee 3 to 5 things about you that are not anywhere else on your application? So your essays here shouldn't read like a resume. They should really, from your perspective, tell them things that aren't elsewhere on your application. So brainstorm those 3 to 5 things starting now, and I'll give you some ideas for ways you can go about doing that now. I don't know if there are any English teachers on here or any parents, but I make sure to highlight, and when I'm in the room with students, I actually have you all repeat this back to me. This is not a high school English class essay. You do not need a thesis, and you do not need to restate the questions, okay? You don't need to say, my challenge was, and then at the end, my challenge was, no thesis statement. Please don't have a thesis statement. If you have an English teacher who reads your essay, ask them to read it for grammar, for readability. If they tell you that you need a thesis statement, say, no, I don't. It's not an high school English class essay, and I don't need a thesis, I promise. Okay, so one activity that you could think about doing this summer is to find some sample essays online, just to get a sense of what people write about, not to use the same topic, not to use the same even flow or format, but as you're reading the essays, think about, what did you find out about this student? What did you notice about the format? Did it work well? Did it not work as well? What is the subject? And would you like to have dinner, meet this person, work on a project with this person, and would this person be an asset to the college campus? The reason this activity is helpful is that it starts your brainstorming what might be important and who you would want to hang out with on campus and what the values and what the skills are that are highlighted in those essays. So find a bunch, read a bunch, and then think about your values. So here's a list of values. As I'm talking about the personal statement, a lot of the resources that I use are from College Essay Guide, Ethan Sawyer. You can sign up and take a free 1-hour personal statement course if you choose, but he has lots of really great resources that are free on his website. You don't need to pay him anything. You don't need to sign up for his big long course or anything like that. But he has some really nice sample essays and other things on his site. And so I would recommend that you check those out. So thinking about what are your values. So if I was going to think about my values, some things that some students have told me recently and their values are, say, what if your value is that you really like to be challenged? In your essay, I don't want you to say, I really like to be challenged. That's super boring, and it doesn't really show me anything. So instead, I might say something about sideways stories from Wayside School. I don't know if any of you all have read these books. I used to spend hours and hours and hours reading these books, figuring out their puzzles. And I really like to do that. My sister, if she was going to write an essay about her wanting to be challenged, she really always just wanted to play soccer with better soccer players. She liked learning from them. She thought it made her a better soccer player. So that's what she did. That's something she could show that would show this value of challenge without just saying, I like a challenge. Some of my students who say aren't great public speakers at the beginning of high school join the debate team, and over time they really become more confident and comfortable in front of a room. And so that would be a really nice story to show that you like to be challenged, to show that you constantly are interested in growing and changing, and that's something schools like. Laughter, efficiency, there are lots of values on this list. Diversity, things that you might want to talk about that are important to you that are not other places on your application. So after you've done these brainstorming activities, think about what are your 3 to 5 things. Write them down. What have the admissions officers not seen anywhere else on your application? What makes you you? What are your values? What makes you an outstanding candidate? And they really do want to hear your voice. So many admissions counselors, their full-time job is reading applications. So they know what a high schooler sounds like, and they want to hear your voice. They like talking to high schoolers. I like talking to high schoolers. Again, I'm really sad we're not in the same room. And so they're going to know if you didn't write your essay, and they want to hear your voice, and they want it to be authentic to who you are. So a few more tips. Again, write in your own voice, focus on your strengths and your growth. Try to take a fresh approach. These slides you're going to get, I think they're up in the handout, so you don't have to worry about taking notes. And if you want to see this again, you can just click on the same link and it will be accessible. You can watch it again. Organize your material, use the active rather than the passive voice. So this is really tricky and really hard, I think, throughout schooling. Anytime you use it is, or it was, or it has been, or it had been, try to flip it around and think about what you were doing. So instead of, it was a great summer virtual learning experience that I took advantage of at NIH. No, I participated in this certificate course through the NIH this summer. Put yourself in the active voice. What did you do? I know many times we have these collective verbs and these collective, nouns, and we want to say we did this. As a club, we did this. Here, it's your time to really stand up and shine. So think about what you did. Make sure you're editing for grammar, punctuation, spelling. Have a couple of other people check this. But don't make this a confessional, right? It should be personal, but not a confessional. Don't write about someone else. So this is something I see quite often. You have someone who you really admire, and then your essay ends up being about that person instead of you. Make sure it's about you. That's what the admissions committee wants to hear. Don't write about risky or inappropriate topics. If you Google this, you can find a list of things that are typically not recommended. Don't lie or exaggerate. Avoid overusing the thesaurus. It really should sound like you again. So when I see essays that someone has just used the thesaurus and gone through, it doesn't really sound, and there's always a risk in using the thesaurus that you won't get the perfect word, and then it won't even make sense, or it won't say what you think it says. Avoid cliches. Instead, use vivid, specific details, events, and facts. If anybody in the world could say it, I would encourage you to stay away from those sentences and instead tell me something about you and what's important to you. Don't repeat information found elsewhere on your application. Take the opportunity to add value. So you're going to have a space to write about your activities. It's fine if there's some overlap, especially if there's something in that activity list that's really important to you. You don't have a lot of time. You don't have a lot of words in that section, so that could be something that there would be some overlap here, but in general, make sure that you're not just rehashing your resume or your activities list. This is a video I encourage you to watch about Pete the Cat. It's again on the college essay site. And the point of this video is that it's really, really easy to take your essay and take it to a bunch of people and say, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And they all are going to have slightly different opinions about what you should include and what you shouldn't include. So if you think about this like going to 5 different doctors, right? You would be using up resources if you just kept asking a bunch of different people for their advice. It's fine for you to do that, but ultimately it needs to feel like you and sound like you and be what's right for you. So don't be afraid to not use feedback that you're given. Maybe someone will say, oh, you should completely rewrite this essay and focus on X or Y or Z. You don't have to do that. And what you ultimately submit is just between you and admissions. Admissions has no way of going back to your parent and telling them that you didn't submit that essay. And so I think use other people, but ultimately it's up to you and needs to feel right to you. Don't let your parents write it. Experts know what a high school sounds like. It would be like showing up to college in, a tux or a ball gown, something much more sophisticated than is necessary. They want to hear you. English teachers, again, I'm going to state it one more time. No thesis. This would be like, I'm going to wear my favorite outfit. Here's my favorite outfit. That was information about my favorite outfit. That's not necessary here. Okay, this year, one of the big changes on the application is that there is a COVID-19 question. Here's what it looks like. I just cut and pasted from the Common App website. It's optional. It says, do you wish to share anything on this topic, yes or no? Please use the space to describe how these events have impacted you. So you only have 250 words in this section. And like I said before, your counselor is going to have a space to talk about the grading policies and how long you were off of school and what was canceled and things like that. So you don't have to focus on those things. Instead, in those 250 words, what you should focus on is the challenges that you faced, the impacts on you, but even more importantly, what did you do about it and what did you learn? So on the College Essay Guy site, he has some examples that students wrote, but really the focus should be, what did you do and what did you learn? What did you, did you take a course? Did you learn how to code? What were you spending this time doing? Did your parent lose a job? Did you spend time taking care of a sibling? Did you have to get a job to help pay bills? These are all things that could make sense here in this essay. Okay, recommendation letters I'll talk about briefly. These should be from teachers who know you well and can comment on your intellectual skills and your potential. So most of the time I say 11th grade teachers in an advanced class who know you well. I know that this year the school year was cut short, but be thinking about which teachers you have a really close relationship with and start reaching out to them. Ask them. If they hesitate and they aren't going to write you a strong letter, ask someone else. I want you to, as best you can, avoid form letters. So the way to do that is helping your teachers write the letter. Don't write the letter for them, but at least a month before the letter is due, make sure you filled out their form thoroughly. And by that, I mean supplement with details to refresh their memory. So remember when I came every day after school because I didn't do well on that test? Remember when I started coming to lunch every day? Remember when I was the leader of this project? Remember this really great project that I presented? Jog their memory. They have a lot of students, so help them. Give them your resume. Again, the recommendation letter should not be a rehashing of your resume, but sometimes it's helpful for them to see the other things you have done during high school, and always waive your right to see the letters. Okay, let's get into paying for college a little bit. So for financial aid, you're going to need to fill out the FAFSA and the CSS profile. So FAFSA is for public schools. The CSS profile has a lot of the same, but some additional information. That is what most private schools use. So you're going to need to start filling out both. As soon as these open, you're going to want to start filling these out. So one thing that you could do right now is go ahead and apply for an FSA ID. This is an ID that is going to link your taxes to the FAFSA, your parents' taxes. That's something you can do now. And then start filling out this information as soon as these things open. So that's October 1st. It used to be that you had to wait for your parents' taxes to be able to fill out these forms. Now that's not the case. It's this past year's taxes that you're going to use to fill out this information. But there are places that later say something happened with COVID-19, say someone lost a job, so taxes are going to potentially look very different next year. There are going to be places that you're going to be able to request changes on your financial aid package. But go ahead and start doing this early. There's merit aid and need-based aid. There's grants and loans. I'm going to talk about all these in another slide. Sometimes private schools give more financial aid, again, because they have these giant endowments. And here are some resources that I recommend as you start looking for scholarships, but also reach out to your counselors. For those of you who have admissions, people who help with the college application process in your school, reach out to them, reach out to your counselors and say, where have other students been successful in getting colleges and getting scholarships for college? Many times there are really small local scholarships. And sometimes they seem small, like $500, $1,000. But if you apply for a bunch of these, that can add up really, really quickly. I had a student who's in school now who just applied to a bunch of scholarships and was very successful because she applied to a bunch of these smaller scholarships and was able to just start collecting that money. Don't pay for these services. So there are lots of sites that will say, oh, you give us some money and we will tell you the scholarships that you're eligible for. These sites can all do that. These are all database sites. FastWeb is a great one. It's free. You do have to give them an email address. and they do keep track of what you're looking at, so be aware of that, right? Online privacy, but these are all free services. So be thinking about who you are. If you're first generation, there are first generation scholarships, there are diversity scholarships, there's STEM scholarships, there are scholarships for different types of majors. So be looking for all of those. Okay, so need-based versus merit-based financial aid. So need-based aid is going to be based on your family income. It's based on those taxes. For that, you're going to fill out the FAFSA or the CSS profile. There are also some scholarships, but this, what I'm really talking about is what you need based on the school's calculator for these things. Then there also is merit-based aid. So this could be based on academics, athletics. Sometimes you have to fill out an application. Many schools, you have to fill out an application to say get into their honors college or get into their honors programs. So be aware of that. Once you have your list of schools, start looking at what they offer. And sometimes there are additional opportunities after you already get there. So for example, I know schools that if you do well that first semester, then there are a bunch more scholarships that you're available for that are merit-based once they see that you do well when you get there. Okay, your financial aid package is very complicated and very confusing. So make sure you understand all of the bins on there and what you actually have to pay at the time, and then what you're actually going to have to pay back. So grants are completely free money. These are things you do not have to pay back. Scholarships, same thing, free money. You want as many of those as you can possibly get. Then there are going to be, some of you are going to get work study. So this is where basically the federal government pays for you to have a job. And so most of these are on campus. There are lots of different options. Sometimes these can be great for gaining experiences. I had a student who worked in a lab, who cleaned glass in a lab as her work study. That turned into an actual lab position. And now she has been able to use that to gain other opportunities. But you don't have to do that. It's just an option that would be available to you. Then there are loans. So loans you have to pay back. And not only do you have to pay them back, but you have to pay them back with interest. There are different types of loans. So make sure you and your families are fully aware of all of the conditions on your financial aid package, because again, loans, you don't have to take them. I don't recommend that you take more loans than you have to or that you need to, but be aware of that on your package. Okay, I'm going to pause just for a minute and see what other questions I have. Certain programs look for volunteering research. It's difficult to do any of this now due to COVID-19. Couldn't do it before because of my age. How will it affect me? It's a great question. Know that you are not alone. Everyone is having these same difficulties. See what you can do this summer, what things you can, what volunteer opportunities there are. There are lots of virtual volunteering opportunities. There are lots of free classes, different places. So they're just going to want to know, how did you spend that summer? How did you spend that time off? So yes, I want you to take care of yourself. Yes, I want you to do other things, but think about what you can learn or how you can gain some skills and experiences even virtually. And that's going to help you get a future internship at a place like NIH. On your cover letter next year, you're going to be able to say what you did and how you spent this time. So this is a great question. It's later, but I'll address it briefly now. How do you demonstrate interest if you are unable to visit? So you could do lots of things. Go to their website, fill out the card, follow them on Twitter, retweet them, Go to them on social media. For many schools, the name and email address of the regional representative is actually there. And so you could email admissions, email your regional rep, tell them a little bit of an intro, who you are, why that you're interested in their school, and then ask them a very specific question that is not answered on their website. So look at their website, ask them something that's slightly different. Study tips for the SAT. Lots of practice problems. The more you familiarize yourself with the types of questions, the better. And use Khan Academy. It's really a wonderful free resource. And make sure when you are looking at those questions that you fully analyze your answers and which ones you got wrong, because you don't want to get that type of question wrong again. So spend the extra time. Why did I get this question right? Why did I get this question wrong? Why were each of these choices right or wrong? So spend that additional time. And make sure you're timing yourself at least for some of these. For essays, is it all right if we have less of an academic tone? Absolutely. You don't have to have an academic tone. Be you. When should you begin to apply for scholarships? Some of them are going to open in the fall, some of them in the winter, some of them in the spring. Start looking, keep a really nice spreadsheet about the deadlines and the requirements. And then just continue to apply. The more you apply to, the more likely you're going to be able to answer. So this is a great question about personal statements. I know there are a lot of common topics like injuries that people recommend staying away from because they don't want it to turn into a sob story. But if you think you could create an impactful essay about your growth as a person, would you recommend going with that topic? Absolutely, you could. The difficulty with common topics is that then you need to say something that is less common. So be thinking about how you can go above and beyond that common story to really say something that's unique about you. Again, they want to hear your voice. If it's a common topic, maybe you want to thread some other ideas into that, but they want to hear how you grew. What did you do? What did you learn from that experience? COVID question, be there for just this year? Not sure yet, to be determined. I imagine it'll be there at least for the next couple of years, because anyone who's in high school currently is going to have been affected by COVID-19 in some way. So if I had to guess, I would say it'll probably be there for a little while. Can you ask any teacher for a recommendation? Sure, but again, they're primarily going to be looking for people who can talk about your intellectual potential, your growth, things like that. So they're going to be looking for someone in an academic subject in many cases. If you're interested in STEM fields, I typically recommend at least one STEM teacher in a more advanced class. That could be, you know, AP Bio, AP Physics, something like that, IB, Biology, and then you could do one humanities professor. But make sure you are helping your teachers and guiding them so that they aren't going to be sending a form letter. How would you recommend addressing the NIH internship in the COVID question? I would say exactly what happened. Again, use the format that I gave you. I received an NIH internship. it was canceled. Instead, I attended these Monday sessions. I got the certificate. In addition to that, I did X and Y and Z, and I learned X and Y and Z. So I would definitely address it there. If there is an internship, there was a program, there was a job that was canceled, that is definitely a way COVID-19 has impacted you. Is there a difference between essay prompts from Coalition and Common App? So the biggest difference is that the length is different, although some schools have made them the same. So take a look at based on school. In many cases, the Coalition is going to be 550 and the Common App is 650, but double check that based on your school. How can we tell if the recommender is hesitating, might not be able to write a strong letter if we have to ask over email? Yeah, nearly impossible. But I would send a very enthusiastic email asking them and see how what you think. You can also change your mind. You can also ask them if you're back at school in person. This isn't something you have to do right this second. You can wait and get back to, and if your school is going back in the fall, this is easier to judge in person. What links your parents' taxes to the FAFSA? Yeah, you can, the really nice thing that you can now do on the FAFSA is basically grab the taxes so you don't have to input all of that information manually. So that's why you need to apply for an FSA ID. And then that's how they match you and make sure, everything is right with your identity and everything else. And so, that's something you could go ahead and do. The longer you wait, sometimes the longer it takes for you to get your ID. And so that's something you could think about doing now. One support person, parent is going to need one, and you're going to need one as well. So some of you are asking about different values and how can you address that. I think telling stories, thinking about ways that you can show things and not just say this is a value that is important to me. What happens to scholarship money if you get a full ride? It's a great question. It really depends on the scholarship. And so just be aware of that. So for some schools, the scholarship is going to actually go to the school anyway, and then the school will just have to pay less money. Some scholarships, you're still required to pay your expected family contribution. So even if it's a full ride scholarship, sometimes it's not actually a full ride. I know it's really complicated. If your expected family contribution is 0, that means that they'll pay, but sometimes they aren't actually going to pay everything. So sometimes, like I had this happen with a student this year, she got a full ride scholarship, but it didn't actually cover her dorm. And so now she's applying to scholarships that will cover those other things. But like I said, it just depends. Some scholarship, it's just cash in your money, in your pocket, sorry, depending on how that's written. So it just depends. Is there a personal statement that stood out to you in particular? I think in general, when I know students well, the essays that I appreciate the most are the ones that really their personality comes through and their goals and their backgrounds and values come through. So I always smile when I read an essay and think, oh yeah, this does sound like that person. So anyone can apply for aid. Sometimes you're still eligible for some things, and sometimes even if you aren't going to qualify for need-based aid, depending on the school, you have to go through and fill out the FAFSA or the CSS profile to get those that merit aid also. So again, it just depends on the school. How do you apply for work study? So that will show up in your financial aid package. You don't have to apply separately for it. And then schools have different ways that you can go through and actually get your job. So sometimes they are just assigned to you. Sometimes you can go through and actually apply like any other job. But when you are given work study as part of your financial aid package, then you're basically guaranteed a certain hourly rate and a certain number of hours per week or per month. Normally it's based on the semester and how much money you can make. And so schools do that a little bit differently, but it's something you have to accept. So I had some students that had appeared on their financial aid package. This happens for loans too. If you don't actually go in and say, yes, I want that money, it doesn't just magically appear. So make sure, I know not all of you use emails as frequently as maybe we would like you to, but make sure throughout this whole process, especially once you get accepted and get your financial aid, things that you're checking and you're following all of the directions. And if you have a question, you're calling the financial aid office, you're having your parents, your family, your support persons read those to make sure you're doing all of those things. Leadership is always really important. Highlight that again through some stories. When were you a leader? What did you do? What did you learn? What did you accomplish? Nonprofits look good on resumes? Absolutely. Any volunteering. Somebody asked about virtual volunteering. Google that, type it in. I have students who are there's some buddy programs where you can say, reach out to somebody who's in a nursing home or someone who doesn't have family. I have some students who are working on the crisis text lines. So things that you can do virtually. There are lots of options. So medical volunteering is a little bit trickier. And you're correct, many medical programs look for medical volunteering. Everyone is in the same situation. As soon as you are able to shadow or volunteer, do it at that time. Medical schools are looking for experience in a clinic or in a hospital. So virtual experiences aren't really what they're going to be looking for in the end, but they know that everyone is in the same situation. Virtual research internships this summer. So I know of some students that have found some things. Again, NIH, it's not possible. All of our summer internship programs were completely canceled. But there are some other places that are hiring students to do research, write reviews, do data analysis, things like that. But someone asked, what are some productive things to do during the downtime for college during the summer? Find some things to learn and grow and do that will help your community and things like that. And College Essay Guy actually has, I think he's up to 12 different lists of things that you can do during the pandemic. So take a look at that. Paid internship versus unpaid internship make a difference? Not necessarily, no. How important is demonstrated interest? It's a great question. It depends on the school. So again, look at that college data profile, or if you literally Google, does X school track demonstrated interest, you'll be able to find it. So some of the really elite schools, they don't track it. So it would be a waste of your time. But some schools really care and want to see that you are engaged because it, in their mind, is more likely that you will actually attend that school the more they know you care about it and you have taken the time to show your interest. So somebody asked about vet school and what's the best major. vet school, med school, grad school, they care less about your major and more about the courses that you took. So for vet school and med school both, even if your major is something that is in humanities, so long as you have taken all of their prerequisites, they care less about what the actual major is on your diploma. When and where can we create a profile for FAFSA? FAFSA opens October 1st. How can international students look for scholarships? So it's definitely going to be more limited. They are out there. For international students, take a look and see. So some universities are much more generous when it comes to international students. So take a look at that, but you're definitely going to be limited. Can you elaborate more on work study? So I think I did. I hope I answered your questions, but really it's you have a job and you get paid and it goes towards your tuition. And the benefit is that it comes from the federal government. And so you're sort of in some ways guaranteed that money. The other really nice thing about work study is that it's typically an on-campus job that's say necessary, but maybe not be difficult. So for example, my work study in college was basically sitting in a computer lab. So I had to make sure everything was fine. I had to make sure it was cleaned up, make sure there was paper in the printer and there was ink and stuff, but really I could study during that job. And so there are options. My brother, I think he swiped cards at the gym. So he could also stand there with his book and be studying while he was meeting people and swiping cards. Would you recommend online school? So it's a great question. It's hard to know what the fall is going to look like. I think if you are going to be taking online courses, really try to reach out, meet people, find some study groups, find a way to interact with your professor. I know some are having online like virtual office hours. So again, make those connections and make sure you're doing well. I've heard from some students that one of the challenges with taking courses online is that it's easy for assignments to pile up because you don't have the accountability of going to class. And so it's easy to get behind. I don't know if you found that as you were finishing this last year of high school, but I think even more so with something, college classes that are online, they can move very quickly and have lots of assignments and lots of reading and fewer assignments. So if you are not keeping up with the lectures, you're not keeping up with the reading, those tests and those projects can come up very, very quickly. Oh, this is a good question. What is the difference between early action, early decision, and normal applications? And can any of them impact your chances of being accepted into said college? So, okay. Yes, all of the above. So early action is an earlier deadline. So typically say October 15th, November 1st, November 15th. And early action just says, I am interested in your school. I want to go to your school. It is not binding. So you can apply to a bunch of schools, early action, that's completely fine. And then you have your acceptance earlier. So in some cases, you might not have to apply to more schools. So that's one way to have your acceptance earlier. If there's one school, there are a couple of schools that this is an option, and you take that option, then you don't get in, then you have a later deadline where you can apply to some other schools. I haven't heard yet of schools that have been pushing back these deadlines. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know what the timeline is going to look like for taking the SAT and the ACT, but if there are schools that are, test optional, test blind, and you apply early, that's great. In some cases, there are reports that it helps your chances, but some schools say that they use the exact same measures, they look for the exact same thing, so it doesn't. But I think if you're ready to apply, it's a nice way to have those decisions early. Early decision is different. Early decision is binding. And so basically you can only apply to one school early decision, and you sign something that says, if you get into that school, you will go there. So the only exception is if you can sort of prove later on that the financial aid package that they sent you is not enough money for you to go there. That's the only way to get out of those binding agreements. But basically you agree if you get into that school, you will withdraw all of your other applications. Again, some schools, in some cases, it may give you a slight edge because the school knows you're going to be going there. And normal applications is later. Typically those are, say, December 1st, December 15th, January 1st. But no matter what, it doesn't matter if you do early action or regular decision, you have all the way until May 1st to make your decision. So let's say you apply to some schools early action, you apply to some more schools regular decision. You still, basically all of the schools have agreed to this May 1st deadline. Again, I don't know if that timeline is going to get pushed back, but for early action, it's just saying, I want to go to your school. You don't have to make that decision. So if you're applying for a medical-based straight program, well, writing your essay on something medical related like love for medicine increase your chances on getting into the school. So not necessarily, but I would highlight some of the things that they're looking for. So my recommendation to you would be to go ahead and get on AAMC's website and take a look at their list of the things that they're looking for, and then try to highlight those and ask and they have a really nice guide for recommenders. And so if you're applying to medical school now, you know, one of the programs that goes straight through, I would give your recommenders that same guide so they can highlight those same core competencies. Does a social media footprint have a major impact on college acceptance? It's a great question. In some cases, yes. So we hear, right, that some students have gotten their acceptances removed based on things that they've posted on social media. I wouldn't say all the time, but I would be aware of your social media presence and what it says about you. I know that sometimes admissions counselors will just go ahead and Google your name and see what pops up. And so I would do that, and I would do this throughout your career. Google your name, see what pops up and what your presence looks like. Make sure that there isn't anything on there that you wouldn't want future employers to know also. Can I give a recommendation letter to my counselor? So your counselor is going to write one of your letters. Typically, they write about you in relation to the other students in your school, and then they write about the school profile. And so again, help them write this this letter. All right. Will the certificate be emailed to you? Yes. So if you attend 5 of 6, then we will email those to you, and then you can include that on your resume. Goodness, lots of good questions. Strong connection, 10th grade pre-calc. Yeah, I think that would be fine. You know, again, intellectual potential is what they're looking for. Can we use this webinar on our resume? So you could talk about this. I think it would be stronger if you attend all of them and can say that you received this certificate. But again, they want to know what you learned. So make sure you include that. Lots of questions about the certificate. SAT, ACT multiple times, such as taking it once a year for summer programs 9 to 10, and then for college. Yep, that's great. Most schools are going to take your highest, and most schools are actually going to super score. So even if you did better in math one time, better in reading, they're going to take your highest score and put them together. If you take it more than 3 times, then sometimes they start to question that, and your score doesn't typically go up significantly after the third time. But if you take it multiple times, that's completely fine. How do you know if you got an NIH internship? So all of our programs were canceled this summer, unfortunately. There are no NIH internships. Many schools require counselor recommendations. What if I don't know my counselor well? Yeah, so most of the time they're going to give you a form to fill out. If you have the opportunity to meet with that person, I would go ahead and do that. But then they're going to be looking at your entire application. So for even if you don't know your counselor well, they're going to be looking for what your school offered, what kinds of tests, how it was affected by COVID-19. And so that's still going to be an important letter. Is there a limit to apply for scholarships? Nope, you keep applying. I applied for my FSA ID. Yeah, your parent, one of your support persons, your guardian or parent needs to apply for one too. Have them get on and do exactly the same thing that you did. Are essays and personal statements weighted equally? So it depends. Get on the college data, college profile sheets and take a look. All right, okay, lots of good questions. Okay, I'm gonna go back because I have like 3 more slides that I wanna get to, and I don't wanna keep you all, but these are really excellent questions that you all are asking. Okay, so interviews. I imagine many schools are still going to be doing interviews. Even if it is virtual, make sure you're on time. Expect 45 minutes plus or minus. Dress neatly, look presentable. Again, even if it's virtual. So I have new jeans, sneakers, or flip-flops. You don't necessarily need to wear fancy shoes, but we do recommend that you wear something that looks neat and presentable on the top and on the bottom. We've all seen the videos of people who have to get up and do something or turn around. So make sure you're doing that even for your virtual interviews. Think about answers ahead of time so that you can be confident and do your research on the school. So inevitably, one of the questions that they're going to ask, and I do alumni interviews for schools, they're going to ask why you want to come to this school. Have an answer ready. Look for things beyond weather, location, and numbers and prestige. Okay, so have in mind some clubs you want to join, some programs that they have, some things that they offer that are going to be different from other schools that you're particularly interested in. I'm always impressed with students who can just start spouting all of these reasons why they want to come to the school. So make sure you've done your research and make sure you have several questions ready to ask. If it's an alumni interview, this is a great time to ask about their experience. What advice? What do they really love on that campus? So make sure you are prepared. After the interview, thank the interviewer for his or her time and send a short thank you note. Email is completely fine, but try to send it within 24 hours and mention something that you learned or something that was particularly interesting in that interview. There are different kinds of interviews. There are informational ones and there are evaluative interviews. So informational ones could be face-to-face. Again, that might be virtual, but for these, notes are rarely kept, but the fact that you participated in one will become part of your file. So I recommend when alums or when someone reaches out to students and says, you know, do you want to take part in an interview? In most cases, that's going to help you. Especially if it's just, you know, informational, that'll just be a note in your file that you're particularly interested and took the time to have that interview. Then there are also evaluative. So these results will be part of your file. They typically keep track of things like, why is the student applying? What are the student's intellectual qualities? How has the student demonstrated commitment and motivation outside? Things like that. So these interviews could be with admissions. They could be alumni interviews. Again, I said I do these typically. And I would recommend that you take advantage of those. Not only could it help your chances of getting in, but it's another way to do your research and figure out if you would want to go to that school based on what that person tells you. So think of it sort of as a two-way street, and these dual purposes of those interviews. Info sessions at your high school or virtual info sessions, again, take advantage of these. They're going to help you, and then follow up. So if you meet a regional rep, let's say in the fall, someone comes to your high school, then follow up with them. Again, something that was interesting, something that you learned, or a question that was not able to be answered during that session. All of these things are going to go in your file. And sometimes we've heard from regional reps that they remember particular students, and these interactions can really impact you. Okay, planning for senior year, use a calendar, set manageable goals, put all of these deadlines into your calendar. Tell your guardians, your parents, when they are, the FAFSA and the CSS profile, when those open, early decision, early action, regular decision, honors colleges. For some schools, if you want to be in their honors college, you have to fill out another application, or you have to make sure that your regular application is in by a certain date. So even if the regular decision date is, say, in January sometime, if you want to be a part of the honors college, maybe you have to turn in your application by December 1st or December 15th. So make sure you're aware of all of those deadlines. Take care of yourself. Eat well, get enough sleep. I encourage you to come to our Wednesday wellness series. It's about how to be resilient, how to, especially in the times that we're in, how can you really be prepared to thrive in the fall, thrive through your senior year and through the rest of your career. So I would encourage you to check those out. Keep up with your schoolwork. You're not as much for early decision and early action, definitely for regular decision. Your fall semester grades are going to matter, and be aware that even the early action and early decision, they can pull back your acceptance if you really don't do well senior year. So most of the time it doesn't happen, but be aware that it can. And have fun. This is another reason I want you to start working on all of these things now, this summer, especially before you go back to school. If you go back to school, write your essays now, have someone start looking at them, have your list ready to go, do this research, take the time this summer so that you can enjoy your senior year. Okay, I have a couple more slides. You can read them that I talked about. I'm going to answer maybe a couple more questions, but I hope that you found this useful and helpful, and that you will attend the sessions the next weeks. So take a look, register for all of them. We hope that they will be useful to you in the next years and as you go through college, really building your skill set and your knowledge base in a way that will help you gain future experiences and do well in your next step. Does responding to general emails and letters from colleges count as demonstrated interest? Yeah, in some cases, yes. They keep track of those things. They have these very sophisticated tracking systems. So anytime you're interacting with admissions, again, if they track demonstrated interest, they're going to keep track of that. So some schools, if you do go, they have these cards that you can fill out. Fill out the card, leave it at admissions, write a little note on it. Those types of things go in your file. If I want a biology major, is it better to involve myself in only biology related projects, programs compared to other activities? I think for you all, especially at your stage in life, any of those opportunities where you're going to gain skills and knowledge is going to be important. So even if you ultimately want to go to medical school or ultimately want a biology major, I wouldn't limit yourself to just things involving biology. Do the things that feel right and important to you, and that will come through in your application. What if you're deciding to major in undecided? Absolutely great, fine. We know that many students change their major anyway. We know that the major that is most of the time declared for freshmen is undecided. So you absolutely are not in the minority. Keep an open mind, do things, take classes to help you decide. So there's some more questions about med school. So I have very mixed feelings every summer when high school students start asking about med school, but it is important for you to be aware as you are going through to have those things on your application. So next week on the 23rd, there's a talk about choosing and applying to medical school. If that's something you definitely want to do and you have the time, you could think about joining that webinar. Know that medical schools are only looking for hours and experiences after you start college. So yes, it's always nice to have those building blocks now, but the things that are going to actually be on your AMCAS are only after you start college. That's something to be aware of. So there are a couple of questions about contacting me and asking me specific questions. So there are quite a few of you on here, so I don't know that I'm going to be able to totally keep up. You can email me, but more than that, I would recommend you email your high school counselor and some people in your area who know you well and can be helpful. And many high schools have someone who helps students apply to college. Yeah, so there are lots of different things: restrictive, early action, early decision, binding. There's early decision 1, early decision 2. Make sure you're just reading all of the fine print for all of those things. If I didn't have major challenges because of COVID-19, should I still answer the COVID question? I think it's up to you. You could fill it out and say what you did and what you learned, the same types of things, but you don't have to fill that out. I don't think it's going to negatively impact you if you say no. That's why it's an optional essay. Okay, I'm going to maybe look for 1 or 2 more questions. Okay, I'm not sure. Dr. Marler, are you on, or are there 1 or 2 more questions that you think I didn't hit that were commonly asked?
You know, I think that you did a great job of covering a ton of them. I saw maybe 4 or 5 people asking about virtual volunteering opportunities and basically how to get experience now, even though they can't do things in person.
Yeah, I think reach out to people that you know. Google it, see what's in your area, stay safe. Look in your community for ways that you can be helping. Those are the things I can think of right now. I don't have specifics, and I know lots of you are all across the country. But I would say take advantage of this time and do some things that feel right to you, where you can really learn and really, you know, not just for improving your application, right? That's not ultimately what it's about. It's about seeing what is of interest to you, what skills do you have, what values, what ultimately do you want to pursue. And so I think there are ways to answer those questions or start answering those questions throughout the summer. In a couple of weeks, Dr. Marler is going to talk to you all about doing informational interviews. So that's something else that you can be doing this summer to help answer those questions and make some connections that will help you in the future. I just want to show you, I do have a list of resources here in the end that you are welcome to use. But I hope that you'll be back for the rest of our sessions and that you will get the certificate. And it was really nice to see so many of you virtually. And so have a really great afternoon. And day, and we really do. We wish you all the best, and we wish you all really well, and we wish we had been able to be on campus, we are as sad as you that we couldn't do that this summer, but we're again really happy that many of you that wouldn't have been with us on campus this summer are still able to access some of our resources and some of our presentations. So thank you, have a good afternoon, be well and stay safe.